May the 4th be with you, Brick Fanatics. A bunch of LEGO sets that will be releasing for the 1st of May have been revealed by the LEGO Group, and there's something awfully strange about this lineup. See if you can figure out what it is. The following LEGO sets have been revealed by the LEGO Group and will be going on sale on the 1st of May 2025. 75409 Jango Fett's Firespray-Class Starfighter, 75407 Brick-Built Star Wars logo, 75416 Chopper C110P Astromech Droid, 75399 Rebel U-Wing Starfighter, 75406 Kylo Ren's Command Shuttle, 75415 Kylo Ren Helmet, 75408 Jango Fett Helmet, 40795 Brickhead's Luke Skywalker Rebel Pilot, 40796 Brickhead's Revenge of the Sith Heroes and Villains, 40765 Camino Training Facility Gift with Purchase. Did you figure out what's different for the 2025 May 1st lineup? Rather than being focused around play, most, not all, but most of these LEGO sets are instead intended for display purposes. You've got obvious things, right, like the brickheads. Of course, those are designed for display. And you've got the UCS Jango Fett Jango Fett's Starship. We're not calling it Slave 1 for some reason anymore. But you then have things like that Star Wars logo. You've got things like the brick-built chopper. You've got 2 Kylo Ren sets, neither of which come with a Kylo Ren minifigure, because one is a helmet and then one is a mid-sized starship for display purposes. Really, the only 2 sets here that are oriented around play are the delightful-looking U-Wing and this gift with purchase set, which is either going to be the best thing you've ever seen or absolutely not worth your time, depending on how you feel about the Clone Wars. Before we say anything else, personally, I kind of want 2 or 3 of these just for the minifigures alone. Like the build I could take or leave, but just getting a bunch of clones in that more relaxed casual outfit. There are other different outfits that they could do that are not just traditional clone trooper armor, but just having a bit more flexibility and variety in the kinds of clones that we could collect is quite enticing. And as I said, we might as well get those brick heads out of the way as well. The Luke Skywalker one looks absolutely fine. It certainly looks like a brick head. The Revenge of the Sith one is an interesting collection. It matches very well with the Phantom Menace one that we got last year. Sorry, Attack of the Clones fans, I guess you don't get a nice big collection like this. Personally, I'm quite drawn to the General Grievous. That is very fun to have. I love the fact that he's got all of those arms. I also am really grateful that pregnant Padme is in this set, and by extension Luke and Leia in teeny tiny bump form. Padme being a character that also showed up in that Phantom Menace set, not a character that shows up in minifigure form quite as often as personally I would like. Yes, we got her with the Coruscant Guard gunship, but we've not had her again since, and even that one I wasn't quite sold on that particular minifigure. So it's just nice to see her represented in some form in LEGO in 2025. That U-Wing is probably going to appeal to fans of army building, anybody who loves to have a large collection of different kinds of ships. It's an interesting choice for the only minifigure set in all of these that you actually pay for with real money. I mean, I'm going to end up paying for the gift with purchase with real money off of eBay, but that's beside the point. The U-Wing, you'll probably already know, is a ship that debuted with Rogue One and has come back into prominence thanks to Andor. And Andor is not a show for younger viewers. It's not The Mandalorian in terms of being family friendly for everybody. To that end, it's great that we're seeing another Andor set, but this one again is not one that I think that kids and younger fans in particular are going to really be desperate to get their hands on. It's not Skeleton Crew, it's not Ahsoka, it's not the kinds of Disney Plus shows that have been made with a traditional LEGO Star Wars buying audience in mind. And that, I think, is kind of the point of this video. Here with these sets, with this selection of different types of Star Wars builds, we're seeing a bit of a shift, which has been kind of going on behind the scenes for a while, but is definitely very prominently felt here, where LEGO Star Wars is kind of leaving that younger fan base in favour of prioritising the slightly older fans. That's why, for example, it's a gift with purchase Clone Wars set. Yes, young people watch and enjoy Clone Wars to this day, but it's been a while since Clone Wars was the big thing for Lucasfilm. I don't know, maybe clones in a training environment will come back into prominence with that Tales of the Underworld show that we're going to get, but that did look a little bit more Asajj Ventress focused, rather than just being about traditional clone grunts who really had their moment to shine with the Clone Wars cartoon. That Clone Wars cartoon coming up on 20 years old at this point, that nostalgia cycle has turned around, and suddenly where there was a dearth of all prequel and Clone Wars sets a few years ago, now that's basically all that we're getting. But that's not all, because here's Chopper as well, and Chopper in brick-built form to go alongside your R2-D2 and C-3PO from last year. There's technically a minifigure scale Chopper in here. It's not really the draw of the set though, and it is just kind of included as an addition, and no one I feel is going to quibble and say, but that's a minifigure, because it's definitely not. I feel like that's included because of Ahsoka, and hey, wouldn't you know it, Ahsoka is part of that nostalgia cycle for the Clone Wars again. Even if Chopper himself is a character from Rebels, which is not quite as old of a show, and maybe not quite as nostalgically remembered by adults at this particular moment in time, but give it like a few more years and it'll definitely be the next big thing that the LEGO group starts squeezing for nostalgic juices. So we've got two helmets. One of them, Jango Fett, makes an awful lot of sense given the UCS set. The other one, Kylo Ren, that's a bit of an odd inclusion. And again, we get Kylo Ren's shuttle in this mid-scale design. So we've got two Kylo Ren sets, no Kylo Ren minifigures, but two Kylo Ren sets for display purposes. And I think, again, that's an indication that the kinds of Star Wars fans that 10 years ago now watched The Force Awakens in cinema as children are now getting to the age where they are considering these things as more display, slightly more sophisticated builds to put on a shelf. Now that Kylo Ren shuttle, right? Let's be honest here, that thing was rumoured months ago, and the first big rumour about it was there's not a lot of plastic in the box for the amount of money that the LEGO group is trying to charge for it, and that certainly does seem to be the case, and it is a bad sign when that is the first thing that we learn about a LEGO set. On the one hand, there's a bit of Buzz Lightyear to this, in that it does have an impressive wingspan. On the other hand, that's really all it's got going for it. It does feel like a new paradigm in LEGO Star Wars pricing, and if we're moving towards this kind of more display focus for the theme in general, well, if you look at the rest of the LEGO catalogue, generally speaking, display sets end up being more pricey than play sets, which just, it makes no sense, but I feel like it's a lot about what the LEGO group feel like they can get away with charging sometimes, about what kind of price people are willing to pay for something that they put on display versus something that they give to kids to play with. You can kind of see this reflected through all of these sets, but it's really with Kylo Ren's shuttle here that you feel it in particular. The Kylo Ren helmet, I made a big fuss about the 8080 driver helmet because that one looks really, really nice. I can't say that my eye is drawn to the Kylo Ren helmet in the same way. Like, it's fine, it does the job, it functions. It's never been my favourite helmet anyway. It's always felt like a knockoff Darth Revan helmet to me. I would love a Darth Revan helmet in LEGO form. I think I need to head to Rebrickable. Someone's already done that, I'm sure. But as far as this helmet goes, it's fine. If you've got a collection of helmets already, you're probably going to want to add this one to the collection. If you don't have any helmets already, this would be a weird place to start. The Jango Fett helmet looks nice. It looks very Boba Fett helmet. It does feel like a little bit of a throwback for this theme because of that. I feel like you really get a sense of the challenge of making a domed top for a helmet with Boba and Jango Fett's Mandalorian helmets in particular. They're quite a difficult shape to recreate in LEGO form. Doesn't mean that it's terrible, it's just very bricky. To some people, being very bricky is a good thing when it comes to LEGO, so I'm not necessarily going to count that against this. And then you've got that UCS Jango Fett Starship itself, which I gotta say, I do like that ship. Leaving aside LEGO in general, I quite like the Jango Fett colour scheme for this Slave One ship. I haven't finished it yet, but knowing that I was going to be talking about this, whoops, I started work on putting back together the old classic Jango Fett Slave One from 2002 and trying to figure out whether I had the original version or the new updated version that they released a couple of years later, which had like slightly stronger support struts in places. I believe this is a newer one. I also believe I didn't have as many of the pieces as I thought I did. Either way, the new UCS Jango Fett Starship is, let's be honest here, it's quite an improvement on the old one. There's some nostalgia attached to this. I see it and I think, oh yes, I remember that one. We used to have that as kids. But actually trying to put it back together, I'm reminded of just how much of a pain it actually is to put together and assemble, not least if you don't have all the pieces. And I'm reminded that this minifigure annoyed me so much as a kid that I mutilated it in an attempt to try and make it a little bit better. So I'm all for an updated version of that ship in nice big UCS scale. You'll have to hold on for the moment for the Brick Fanatics review of the set, which will be going up at brickfanatics.com. Make sure you go to the website and check that out. Make sure that you sign up to the newsletter so that you never miss anything LEGO related ever again. But definitely check out that review because it is going to go into great detail about what that new LEGO set is like and how it compares to the old one. And then finally, there's that Star Wars logo LEGO set, which is just kind of baffling because apparently this is something that the LEGO group thinks that you in particular, want in your life. And they might not be wrong. I can't say that a Star Wars logo in LEGO form is necessarily for me, but I do know that these kinds of logo lamps or displays or other kinds of paraphernalia do perform very well. Like, they sell very well in different forms, and it makes complete sense that the LEGO group has looked at some of these products and said, we could get a little piece of that pie. We could have a brick-built logo that works just the same as that. And it kind of ties in with a bunch of other LEGO sets that we've had recently. We've had that love sign, for example, and there's a little bit of the flavour of the Rolling Stones LEGO set to it if you go back far enough. This kind of idea of just, well, it's a logo or it's a design in LEGO form. You can sit it on a shelf, you can hang it on a wall, and you can just look at it and you can be like, Star Wars. Star Wars is a thing. I own a thing that says Star Wars, and that's really all it needs to be. And if that's the kind of people that the LEGO group are currently targeting with their LEGO Star Wars sets, then yes, it's very different to a few years ago where we had all kinds of weird and wonderful ships in LEGO Star Wars form, all kinds of, like the cantina that is now long gone, which I absolutely adore, just a variety of different kinds of sets that we are not getting anymore. This is not to say that we're never going to see any LEGO Star Wars sets oriented around play again. It's just interesting that the LEGO group feels like they ought to target a slightly older audience, a slightly more display-oriented audience at this particular moment in time, going into May the 4th, which is their big Star Wars sales day. I'm sure that down the line we'll get more LEGO Star Wars sets that are instead aimed at a younger audience, but I also do feel like, and I've mentioned this in a previous video, the audience for Star Wars is getting older because younger people are maybe not as fussed about this brand as those who are around the kind of Gen Z / millennial / definitely Gen X and Boomer generations. If you were anywhere between the age of, say, 0 and 30 when the original Star Wars film came out in 1977, then Star Wars is definitely your thing. If you were anywhere between the age of 0 and 30 at around 1997 when Star Wars came back into vogue in a big way, then you are absolutely definitely the right age for Star Wars. If you were anywhere between the age of 0 and I would say 15 at the time that the prequels came out, then you probably love the prequels as well. If you were slightly older, then you probably had that mentality of, oh, it's not as good as my Star Wars back in my day. Ditto the sequel trilogy, ditto probably the Clone Wars, ditto probably the Mandalorian. I don't know, definitely when the first 2 seasons of that show came out, there were a bunch of people who were like, oh, it's definitely not my Star Wars. And yet I feel like that really connected with a younger audience. And then there's not been quite the same big buzz around a Star Wars show ever since, and certainly it's been quite a while now since we've had a new Star Wars film. So if you take The Mandalorian as being kind of the last big cultural touchstone for all kinds of Star Wars fans across generations and really permeating into the mainstream, then we've now had quite a few shows which definitely have their audience. People love Andor, some people love Ahsoka, some people love The Acolyte, that one maybe didn't get received quite as well, but you get my gist. Like, there are people who like these shows, but it's not as big and widespread and mainstream as The Mandalorian was in its heyday. And I imagine that Disney is banking on some of that Mandalorian cultural ubiquity being very relevant when they finally get around to releasing The Mandalorian and Grogu, the standalone film that's supposed to cap things off for that particular duo. Whether or not it actually caps things off and whether or not they feel like they can squeeze some more out of these particular characters remains to be seen. But I imagine that a lot of hope is riding on that film. In the meantime, there are a lot of younger people who are definitely interested in Spider-Man, definitely interested in the Avengers, definitely interested in Batman, not as interested in Star Wars, just because maybe there's just not been the same kind of big event for Star Wars that there has been in generations past. Not at least in the past, 5 years. Because yes, it's almost been 5 years now since Luke Skywalker showed up at the end of The Mandalorian Season 2, which I feel like is the peak moment for this show, and it kind of lost a lot of momentum going into Series 3. That Luke Skywalker episode came out in December of 2020, so it's not quite been 5 years yet, but we are almost there. We are in the 5th year, definitely, from that show. Maybe I'm selling Season 3 of The Mandalorian short, and maybe I'm also selling short The Acolyte and Ahsoka and Andor Seasons 1 and 2, and Skeleton Crew, and all of the other cool, fun Star Wars shows of varying quality and interest level that we've had since. Definitely there's some fun stuff in there. I just don't feel like, and this is part of a bigger issue with Disney Plus in general, but I don't feel like Disney has designed a lot of these things with staying power in mind. They're kind of here and then they're gone, and that's not great for Lego, because if something is here and then it's gone, then why would the Lego group want to do a Lego set on it? They want something that is going to stay relevant for a couple of years in order to be able to keep selling toys for a couple of years. And so while we're waiting for the next big tentpole moment for Star Wars, while we're waiting for the next big film in particular, we get things like a Star Wars logo, which is as generic and as bland and as just widespread, everybody can understand it as possible. No matter what Star Wars you're into, no matter whether you like Andor, or whether you like Skeleton Crew, or whether you just want Mara Jade to come back, or whether you're into obscure LucasArts games from the 90s, which I guess is also just wanting Mara Jade to come back, no matter what kind of Star Wars you're into, you recognise the Star Wars logo. And maybe that's the kind of surface, blanket level, anybody can recognise this kind of attitude that the Lego group wants from their sets while they're waiting for the next film. Which is a shame, because I'd kind of like Tales from the Underworld to give us another Asajj Ventress minifigure. It's been a while since we've had one. Did we have one that wasn't the weird googly-eyed Clone War design? I don't think we did. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I feel like we've only ever had a googly-eyed Asajj Ventress. It's definitely time for another one of those. But we're probably not going to get that, because why would the Lego group waste time and resources making a Lego set for a show that they don't know whether or not it's going to be a hit? And even if it is a hit, Disney is probably going to sweep it under the rug for the next big thing in 5 minutes' time. So we're getting reliable stuff here. Things that are going to appeal to the kinds of people that are always buying Lego Star Wars. And that means adult fans, it means a little bit more of a focus on display sets, and it means nostalgia, nostalgia, nostalgia. And that's not necessarily to say that any of these Lego sets are bad per se. I'll let you make your own mind up about that. It's just to say there aren't as many minifigures here, there aren't as many play sets here, and while we are probably going to get some of those eventually, it's just fascinating that right now the Lego group feels like their best strategy for May the 4th is to really just focus on grown-ups who build things once, put them on their shelves, and let them collect dust. Do you agree? Because you are perfectly entitled to disagree. Let us know in the comments down below. Let us know your thoughts on this wave of new sets, which ones you may or may not be picking up on the 4th of May, or the 1st of May if you really feel like it, and which of these you're not as interested in, and which of these you feel like the Lego group is maybe just overreaching or stretching a little bit or doing something that's just a little bit off. Let us know in the comments, and do all of the rest of the YouTube things. Give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe and the notification bell. If you're going to be making any Lego.com purchases, especially going into May the 4th, make sure that you use the affiliate link which is in the description, or the QR code that is on screen. They take you straight to the Lego website. We get a percentage of the sale when you purchase through those links. Doesn't cost you a penny extra, but it helps to keep us making videos. And as mentioned up top, make sure that you do go to brickfanatics.com for coverage of all things Lego, including that Jango Fett's Starship UCS review, which is going to be coming soon. And make sure that you sign up to our newsletter so that you never miss anything Lego related ever again. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Oya Mandalore!